Why do you coach? Welcome to the Nick Anthony Show. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Nick.
Hey, Nick. How you doing today?
I'm good, Amp. I really am.
Good.
Yeah.
So I
Excited to be here.
Good.
Oh, you're going to throw something at me this
I'm
time.
going to throw something at you this time. It's like,
Okay.
are you a Hofstra fan, a Delaware fan, or a Kentucky fan?
Yeah, that's not cool.
I love the
I'm a
blue.
little bit of a Florida Gators fan, but
Gotcha.
but-
I love that blue on you.
Thanks.
Looks good.
I
It
appreciate
makes you look cheery and
Yeah.
happy.
well, I looked in the mirror today, and that'll lead to our topic, but I have a few things for you first.
Oh,
So,
I messed you up already.
you did. Are you a coffee guy?
You asked me this in another
I did?
episode. Yeah. And I said,
You're
no,
not. You're right.
I'm
You
not.
did say it. See,
I am not a coffee guy. I
uh,
haven't told you then. There's a story behind it, but it's too long of a story to tell for this.
well, Wawa, our local Wawa, has this coffee, Chocolate Bliss. It is so good. So I had that this morning. So I'm all jacked up a little bit.
Gotcha.
My other thing is just, I think, interesting story. I talked with an old NFL friend of mine the other night, and when I was at the Eagles, John Harbaugh, and he was in the news, in the recent past of getting the Giants job, losing the Ravens job, right?
Right.
And John, I always describe John as the best person I met in the NFL. And
So you just insulted a lot of people, but go ahead.
I don't know if it was insulting. I just raised him above. I was complimenting John.
Okay.
Hopefully he can listen. But he was just so genuine. He was just so normal, authentic. He was the special teams coach when I was at the Eagles. Just so good. And the story I have about John is that 5 or 6, I can't even remember, years after I left the Eagles is when he got the Ravens. And I'm in Baltimore with my family. Kids are young. I get off an elevator in a Marriott down by the Baltimore Harbor, and John is right there. I opened the door, and John Harbaugh is right there. And it's the day of his press conference,
Wow.
his introductory press conference. And he says he is so excited to see me. I mean, you would have thought, I don't know, I was his long lost uncle or nephew. But it was so cool. And I hadn't seen him or really didn't keep in touch with him, before that when I was at Drexel. And he knew I was at Drexel. He asked me questions about Drexel. And it was just one of the most genuine,
Wow.
cool things. So, when I was speaking to my friend from, the old days in the NFL, I asked him anything about John, if he knew, and he said he is still the exact same person.
Wow.
And I don't know, it was just a cool story to think 18 years, Super Bowl,
Right.
how
Lots
many
of
years,
success,
still,
lots of
yeah, I
things,
mean,
right.
and to think that he's still the same person, I just thought was really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So just a quick the story to
great.
emphasize the, kind of the coaching,
Yeah, it
how cool being authentic as a coach and what
Right.
impressions you can make.
Right. Yeah.
So-
I mean, if you were with your family, he made an impression on your family too.
Yes,
Right.
100%. Yeah, no doubt. So you mentioned my blue sweater today.
Yeah, that probably wasn't fair. It's a cheap.
Well, it's a cheap shot if you didn't mean it, but you said you liked it. So,
Well, I do like it,
okay.
but it's just
But I looked in the mirror.
okay.
Okay. And the title of our episode today is Windows and Mirrors. So I read something, and I've seen this before in some different ways and publications, but I mentioned Justin Sua again earlier in an episode, who's a performance coach, and he puts out some different things. And he talks about this idea of mirrors or windows and mirrors, and he relates it to, kind of coaching, leadership, and the aspect of mirrors, basically looking within. Do you know yourself? right? And then windows, are you able to read others? So, and the idea of two critical parts of coaching, right, is can you can you manage, or can you know what you feel, what you think, how you get distracted, how you just basically knowing yourself and understanding, and then being able to read body language, through the window is, read the body language of what's going on, what are the, what are our players thinking, feeling, what are the referees, what's their mood. So it's that ability to kind of, go back and forth between yourself, looking in the mirror and then basically being able to externalize and see what's going on. Right. I just love, because, if we go back to our emotional skills from previous, discussions, to me that it's such an E skill,
right,
or skills. And I think and I'd be interested to take your take on this, but I gotta believe most people, if you're good at one, you're good at the other. But I don't, and maybe just because I'm having trouble, figuring out if that, what type of, where your mind goes in trying to do both. But I like the idea, and I will say I after reading it, it made me think about different things, and I actually have a slightly different take on the mirror and the windows and the mirrors. But let's stay this path, and then I'll give you my take.
Yeah. So first, for people who haven't watched the first episode,
Yep.
KE is a different way of looking at things. It's,
Yep.
It's the physical, it's the knowledge, and it's the emotional. And then all three of those buckets are big, giant buckets, right? And E is a big, giant bucket. I was talking to somebody just yesterday, actually, and we were talking about a trait that was really important in his hiring process. And like, that goes under E. He's like, I didn't think of that as going under an E thing. So E is huge, just like knowledge is huge, and just like, physical is, stamina, strength, skills. I mean, there's a tons of physical stuff. So just for our audience, it's big, but it's absolutely an E thing. And, to answer your question about whether I think your question was really, do I think that if people are good at looking through a window into people, and what that makes them good at looking through a mirror at themselves? I do think those are different skills.
Okay.
And I think it goes back to episode 3, actually, which is the 4 stages of competence. And we all have blind spots. So I think that you can be good at reading other people's moods and having a blind spot, right? Let's not talk about incompetence. Like, incompetence is such a bad word, but we have a blind spot in ourselves.
Yep.
Right? Or it's a blind spot that we can't even control, right? Because let's say we have a short plug sometimes, because when something just like sets us off, right? We can read our players, we can be calm about all that kind of stuff, right? But then, I don't know, the clock, messes up or whatever, and that just sets us off because of an experience that we've had. That's not a great,
Yeah.
So anyway, I think they're different things.
Yeah.
But they're related, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, maybe that's just my opinion. I guess.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I actually, after you're saying that, I probably would go that way, because you're right. I do think I think one or the other. Sometimes it's like, you're calm and you know where you are, and you may know your tendencies or blind spots, but you actually aren't very good at reading the environment or understanding. You may understand that you're getting crazy in your emotions and you're getting clouded, but you're still not using it to do other things. I was at a game, which I could say there's probably about a lot of games, but often I want our coaches to understand where the referee is, or referees are.
Right.
Meaning they're getting worked up. Like, I always, I have the luxury, right? I'm at a table, or I'm on the sidelines or whatever, where I can watch like a referee. I can watch their body language. I can see they're frustrated. I can see when they go to the other referees and they're talking and they're trying to, let no one see what they're saying. and I can tell what's going to happen just by their body language. It's like they know they made a bad call, and like in a sense of how it would hurt us, we're going to get a bad call down the other end, or vice versa, right? And you can feel it. You can feel they're getting irked by our coach or our player, whatever it is, and it's like, man, just read the environment, like read it. Somebody, or even the assistants we've talked about before, and you and I have talked off, at times about, isn't it their responsibility sometimes to like help each other? Like, hey, he's ready. That ref is close, to giving you a technical or to, throwing a flag or whatever the situation is. So I do get it.
But so I have
so much.
I do. It's just like, so I've already lost track of it.
I know. Sorry.
No. But one of the things I also want to say is like most people are not. Actually, most is. I hope that's not true, but are self-aware. They're not necessarily self-aware, but they're so focused on their perspective that they might have a decent mirror on what's important to them, but they don't necessarily have a decent mirror on what I need to do to deal with somebody else. They can't think about that. And then so, again, I see it's two different things because I know what I need, but I can't read the player.
Yeah.
I can't read the referee. I can't read whatever. And I'm not sensitive to the fact that maybe the fans are, cussing out the referees, and it's a kind of stadium where the referees can hear it.
Yeah.
And then, what do I do about that as a coach? That's not even on my radar that my referees are getting hounded by my fans. Is that really a window? Are you really looking out the window completely? And I don't know what a coach does about it. You know more about that kind of stuff. But you're asking me about awareness. And
that's basically,
it's absolutely the awareness. And then talking about, it's one of my things I've been asking all of our guests and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, what do you do during the game to make sure that you're getting feedback? Well, how do you get feedback during the game? Because I personally know coaches that don't do that. And we're way off subject now. I know that, but I really you have to give assignments like Denise does to your coaches to watch for certain things. And is anybody watching the referees? Is it somebody's job? Because that coach, we said this many times, coaching is hard. There's so many things to do leading up to a game and even during the game that you have to have help. And the only way you're going to have efficient, good help is if they're assigned and they have stuff that you want them to go do. And then when they want to talk to you about that during a game, you have to be self-aware enough or have a good enough mirror to actually listen.
Yeah.
Take action, the appropriate action, whatever it is.
Okay.
So, but anyway, very long-winded answer.
No, it wasn't, because you said you had a lot.
But I'm going to stop there. But those are the big ones. I just think that really what you just said just ties back to so many of our episodes.
Yes.
And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It's interesting. Like I think the best coaches are really good at both, right? And I'm picturing a few coaches where they can really read a game. Now that some of that is just their ability and their to make adjustments and things like that. But to make adjustments, you have to be aware of what's out. What is you're looking through the window. The mirror to me is the harder part, because you are focused on what is outside of you. And so I do think, and it makes me laugh, but you got to look in the mirror before you go outside. And I just think that it's true. I was like, and you ever see somebody walking down the street and you see what they're wearing or what their hair looks like or whatever, and you're thinking, do you not have mirrors in your house? Because I'm so handsome and perfectly. So
we have a great sweat.
But I think because like sports and whether even in business, everything is so out external, right? And you're sitting around a boardroom and you kind of are feeling, or a sales aspect, you're trying to read the person.
Right.
But what are you able to reflect on what you're giving off?
Well, that's why I call it a different skill. Like I would tell you, this happened a year or so ago. I was in water polo. I know this is a sport nobody cares about, but I can get there quickly. There's a line that as a coach, you're not allowed to cross, right? It's kind of like in basketball, I think, right? There's a certain zone where you're not supposed to go outside of that area. Same thing in water polo. You can't go past the 6 meter, right? And so I was sitting next to a coach in the stands, and we were talking about another coach, and he was like, "Oh, that guy." I was like, I turned to him and I said, "You do that all the time." And he was adamant that he never goes past the line. Never. I never do. An hour later, he was coaching, and I took pictures of him way past the line and sent it to him because he got so wrapped up into the situation, he actually I don't know if he loses himself, or that's who he is.
No, definitely.
But is just not aware that he's outside the box.
Yeah.
Like he was adamant in the stands. I never go past that. I'd watched them hundreds of times go past it.
What I do love about that, in a way, is a coach's focus. It's so impressive. Like they're so in the moment, in that moment, but because they're in that moment they're not in their moment here, right? In their own. But yes, I think that is very true. People don't know what necessarily they're doing,
right?
And they need video, somebody to tell them, and I do look at my job often that way.
As you're the mirror.
Yes.
It's your job to be the mirror.
Yes.
Got it.
But let me give you my, can I give you my, go ahead, finish it.
No, I was going to ask if you have examples. So maybe that's where you're going to go.
Well, so I actually have a different take on the window and mirror analogy or example. And I look at them, and because I feel like the mirror is a reflection, right? So it's like, it's the inward thinking, like it's the self-reflection,
right?
Is how I always interpret the mirror. And then I look at the window as you're looking outside, right? What's out there, and I think you do have to do that, but I believe often in the leadership and coaching is the self-reflection first, right? So, and I think, you hear coaches say, well, that's on me, right? And that, they're accepting blame and everything. And I think there's a difference between accepting blame and actually self-reflecting, right? I mean,
agreed.
So like right out of a press conference, whenever a game into a press conference, the coach says like, well, yeah, I'm the head coach. That's which I think they have to do. It's kind of part of the quote unquote game of speaking to the media. But are they really, like, when are they self-reflecting? When are they looking at things? So I have coaches.
Do they really believe?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I go back to PKE again. You walk out of walk into that press conference, you have the knowledge that you're supposed to say that it's on you.
Yeah.
But do you have the emotional fortitude, the emotional strength to really believe it's on you?
Definitely.
Right. Those are two different
100%. I think that's a big.
Right. Go back to PKE, right?
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yes.
By the way.
So, I mean, I have coaches, and I listen intently, and I never say it in the moment, but I have coaches that come off the field or the court or whatever. And I always like kind of cringe when the first thing is like, can you believe the call that ref made? Now that's an emotional response, right? And not necessarily, and in the heat of the battle and maybe just trying to, use me as the ability to get it out into the open.
Sometimes it is true.
Sometimes it's true. But I do think the best coaches, I want to say their first thought, but when they can get to a place where they can control themselves, which hopefully, as we spoke earlier with the window and the mirror, is sooner, that their thought is what was my ownership so it's looking in the mirror. I mean, like, people say that all the time, and maybe that's why it's stuck in my brain as part of how I interpret window and mirror. But what was my contribution to that, right?
We'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by the book, Creating and Evaluating Opportunities. Evaluating potential investment, considering an employment opportunity, finally starting that company you have been thinking about. This book is for you. Available on Amazon. Creating and Evaluating Opportunities.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Like I read, there's an interesting Clark Lee, who's the Vanderbilt football coach. They got, is quote unquote snubbed from the college football playoff. I don't think they were really that much. Yeah. So, but his response, and I'll read it because I don't want to mess this up. And his first response is, no one's fault except our own. We had our opportunities and we didn't do enough. We are not victims in this process. Our ownership is in coming up short. Obviously accepting blame, but really just kind of like, no, we're not going to look external,
right,
for why we didn't get in. We're going to look at ourselves, and as a leader, to me, that's teaching. We're going to look at ourselves first before we start looking out the window to see what, oh yeah, well, this is what happened. And that, it was windy that day, or it was, so you're building in the excuses of why you weren't successful in this case, a season or a game, instead of, okay, what did we do? What did I do that caused this? And then once you kind of can self-reflect, look in the mirror and decide, like, yeah, I should have called timeout there or whatever. Yeah. And then you can talk about accountability of somebody's action. Okay.
I'll push back on you a little bit.
Okay. Let's hear it.
You don't need to roll your eyes.
I'm just kidding.
No, I agree with all that. But I think the bigger question, because, Coach, I'm going back to water polo. I know nobody cares about water polo, but the lessons apply.
You got to stop saying that every time you say it, because then people are going to stop caring about water polo.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a beautiful game. It's just in the water, not on the soccer field. But I saw a game where it was absolutely, the ref made a huge game-changing call in the last 9 seconds of the game. Okay? Huge. Right? So it's understandable to be emotional at that moment.
Yes.
Right? And the sooner you can get out of that state, and the sooner you can get to the state of, okay, not just what should I have done different, but what should I do different going forward to avoid that situation. So it's not just backwards reflection, but it's forward reflection. Yes. What do I do? Like in my keynote that I do, and I know you've seen that a couple times, and our audience hasn't, but I make a real point of saying it doesn't really matter whether it's your fault or not, because you're the only one. It's control what you control. It's an old phrase. Some people treat it like a cliche, but your life is going to be awful. Your life is going to be awful if you just go around and don't accept the fact that no matter what happens, you're the only one that can do something different in your life.
Yes.
Right? If you have a bad spouse, you have drunk kids, you have a bad boss, whatever it is, the only person that can change your situation is you.
Yep.
So even if the ref was bad and made a mistake, even if your player didn't dunk the ball when he was supposed to, even if, to change your life and to change what you're going to get in outcomes, if your outcome's not what you want, you're the only one that can change the future or your future. And the changes might have to be really hard, and nothing can be off the table when you evaluate that. That's why I love your window and your mirror as a thing. And because one is like, okay, I'm taking in all this data through my windows, right? And then in my mirror, what do I need to do to get the results that I want out of that?
So I think the greatest example I know of that is someone who swam the English Channel. I mean, and I don't want to do it a disservice, but because I don't want to, in my head, have made something up that isn't true. But when you had told me the story of the first time you tried to your attempt at your dream, let's be honest, right? I was crushed for you, right? When you got pulled out of the water, so close. But then when I remember when you telling me one-on-one, and then obviously hearing it in other forums. But that's what you just said is almost the way you said it to me. Is like you were angry and like and then once you kind of it didn't seem like it took you that long, although maybe that was the Hollywood version. No, I'm just kidding. But to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what did I not do, and what can I do? Go to your point earlier, what can I do forward? Because I'm going to do this again because I know I can do it now.
Right.
And then evaluating, and to your point about what can you control in my life to make this successful, seems like what you did. But I'm not filling in some gaps. So
No,
can you just
no,
can you mind talking about that? Because I do. It is a huge example in my life that you are the way you did reflect, and I think it's one of the coolest things because whether you fully blamed whether you fully blamed yourself or not, you owned it, and then you were like, I'm going to change it, and I'm going to control what I control, and I'm going to know everything, and that's kind of so.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it because I feel self-absorbed to talk about myself. But I will say that there was lots of things on that event that I think I got ordered out of the water. And I didn't get pulled. I pulled myself.
I like the Hollywood version of yanking you out of the water.
But it happened. You disobey captain's order in the English Channel, you don't have to come back. So I got an order to get out. I got out,
yep.
Right? But there was whole things that led up to that I didn't control very well, right? And it sounds crazy and it's too long to go into it right now, but I think pretty quick. I mean, I will tell you that, I mean, I was angry, I was upset, I was, all that kind of, I couldn't sleep, right? I went to, I'd been in the water for 12 hours, got ordered out, 2-hour boat ride back, slept for 2 hours back in the apartment thing that I rented, couldn't sleep anymore, even though I'd just done all that. So I went out drinking because I was so upset. So I'll acknowledge that.
Okay.
My younger audience might hear that, but and it's not a way to solve a problem, but I had to go through that emotional stage.
Yeah.
But my whole attitude was, okay, that whether I can blame everybody or not is not going to get me across the English Channel.
Yeah.
I have to immediately start doing things differently. Mm-hmm. And I did a ton, and again, it's part of the keynote, but I did a whole bunch of things differently the second time when I made it.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of things different.
Yeah, because of...
But it was on me.
Because you looked in the mirror.
Because I looked in the mirror and I looked out the window, right? Because I interviewed everybody on that boat. I interviewed at least 2 times to understand what happened.
Yep.
On the boat perspective versus the swimmer perspective, right? And then with that window information, I looked in the mirror and said, okay, this is how I screwed up.
Yep.
And this is what I need to do differently. But it'd been really easy to just sit and blame everybody else and never go back.
Yeah. Well,
so, but anyway, but I don't want to use that example, but I want to use the example, right? But so what we're about, what the show's about is about helping people trigger thoughts for people. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that this is a tool that you've learned from somebody else, the window mirror concept. And it's absolutely what the show's all about. You're a great example, Nick. I guess this is the mutual admiration thing or whatever.
This is feel good day.
But this is really important that you took a tool and thought about it and adapted it to your needs.
Mm-hmm.
So even what we're talking about on these shows a lot are things that work for us, constructs that we created, that you created in your career. Things I created in my career, lessons that we learned from other people, and then interviews with people that, think that believe that they are be additive to the conversation and trigger thought. But the fact that you took a tool, thought about it, modified it for your needs, and then used it is really what I hope our audience.
Yeah, no doubt.
All these things.
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt.
Just
know that this stuff has worked for us, or we have observations where it hasn't worked for us.
Well, I think it's like, even to that point, these tools make us think, right? And then hopefully, and even talking to some people who have listened to the show is it sometimes they've told me like their thoughts go somewhere else, like, but it's prompted their thoughts. So hopefully that's the case. I do want to talk about a little, like, to the little bit of the point how do we self-reflect, right? And I saw this kind of breakdown, and I thought it was pretty good. It's like situational, like I should have called timeout, right? Situational assessment, right? And then it's like a post-game, post-race, whatever, a debrief with people. So it's a way to kind of talk with others. I saw one about journaling, kind of getting your subconscious to reflect and just let your thoughts come out, in a sense. And then the other one is feedback, right? Is getting feedback, to your point about interviewing some people, your players, your mentors, what did you do wrong? So I think from a sense of like, okay, how do you self-reflect other than staying in your own brain?
Right.
Is like, let's get some information, let's get some data. And even to the point where you relate that to a window, I'm still in the mirror,
Right.
So either way, I think how you want to categorize it, I think there are the methods to self-reflect are there.
I mean, I don't know if this is a pushback or not, but I am going to push back a little bit because there are a lot. You said this in an earlier episode. A lot of coaches,
Yep.
right, are really CEOs.
Yeah.
They are running their business, and they may or may not have a organizational superior, right? Organizational superior, not superior, to even go talk to.
Yeah.
Right. They may be their boss in name only, but they may not know anything about sports or your sport or whatever. So your self-reflection is, you can't go get help in that way. But like CEOs are in that same position,
Mhm.
right? Where it's hard for them to talk to. They got to go really talk to their board. The board's their bosses in a lot of ways. They can't, you know what I mean? It's just hard for a CEO to find places to go talk to people, right? And so you still have to go engage people, right? So if you're a coach who has nobody to talk to up the chain, right? Sometimes you learn a ton of information because in the English Channel thing, nobody is my boss.
Yep.
Right. I had to go figure out what happened in order to adjust what I was going to do going forward. And I got that by talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I even contend that going and doing the mirror work is window work.
Yeah.
Going and getting all the data that you can, so I like if you're a coach, I'm just use basketball, right? And it's like, I don't know, this is bad. When we've practiced this over and over and over again, but yet in a game, you did this. What were you thinking right at that moment?
Yeah.
Right. And not in an accusatory way, not an attacking way. I mean, maybe my words weren't right then. But, maybe I didn't express that very well. But if you had a player that didn't do something that you thought they were coached, I didn't say that very well. If they did something they were coached not to do, you've got to go figure out why.
Yeah.
And then once you figure out why they did that, then what do you as a coach, what do you have to do differently going forward?
Yep. No, it's 100%. I mean, I see it. It's like, we want to be this, or why are we turning the ball over? I'm just going to yell at that kid. You got to control, you got to do this, and you're hounding, and you think that's, but to me, the mirror and the self-reflection is, what am I contributing to that? What am I not doing at practice? What are we not coaching that is leading to that? If you kind of are like, yeah, that kid does this, or this player does this, but the essence of that is, okay, well, how am I going to change my coaching to help that individual player do something different?
Sports, your career, business, whatever it is, right? If you're not getting the outcome you want, you have to ask yourself, what do I need to do differently to get the outcome I get? And it doesn't matter whether there's very few jobs in this world where you're not dependent on somebody, right? There's very few sports you can play where you're not dependent on. Actually, I don't think there's any. You have coaches, right? Golfers have caddies, right? But right, what do I need to do differently in order to get the outcomes that I want? If you're not getting the outcome you want, you have to do something different, right? And I'm just saying, the window is the data collection, the mirror is the self-evaluation, and then the question is, what do I need to do differently going forward?
Yes,
that's the magic question.
But I do think a gift of a coach is to teach the reflection of what was my ownership in the problem. If you can teach that to your players, then you're creating a selfless and a selfless, cohesive team where we're not blaming others, right? just like Clark Lee in Vanderbilt's situation, is we're not blaming others. We're going to, as a team, we're going to take responsibility. John Wooden, and I am too young to have really seen the UCLA.
I was alive.
Well, I think I was alive, but I was probably just, kicking around in a pack and play or something. He often, and I love the stories when I was looking at examples for who really owns and owns is again the wrong word, probably self-reflects. But his quote, which I think is a great quote, is "You are not a failure until you start blaming others for your mistakes."
Right. I take it a step farther than that, though.
God, now you're a step further than John Wooden.
No, I'm not saying that. No.
Greatest college basketball coach of all time.
No.
Okay, here we go. No, I'm just kidding.
But I'm going to push back on two things you said in there because I'm in church today.
Captain pushback today.
Yeah, it does. But so the on this piece, right, is not just not blaming others. It's really asking yourself, no matter what happened, whatever, what do I need to do differently?
Yes.
Right. So it's not just not blaming the ref. It's asking yourself. It's self-analyzing, mirroring, or whatever right label you want to say. What do I need to do differently? Right. And the other thing you talked about, the importance of all this and the lesson to teaching your players so they become a team. This is not a sports lesson. We talked about how hard coaching is, how important coaching is, the life-changing thing coaching is. If you can teach your player how to self-evaluate to the point that they understand they need to do things differently, when they run into trouble in their marriage or whatever, right? Their marriage, their relationships, their jobs, their businesses, their entrepreneur, whatever they are, if you can teach them in sports how to, and the more important things, I know, right? Sports is really important, but if you can teach them how to self-reflect to the point to where they always ask themselves when they're not getting the outcome they want, what do I need to do differently to get the outcome I want? That's a life. That's.
I would say, I don't want to profess anything parentally, but I think parents need to do that as much as anyone. I mean, the stories that I know in my job and the stories I hear from teachers, not every teacher in the school is picking on your child.
Right.
Like, can we look at what your child's doing before we blame every teacher in the in a school district, in a school. So I do think there's a lot of self-reflection that parents need to teach for their children. Owning mistakes. Not everyone. You're not always the victim. It's easier to feel the victim, I think, when you realize, you know what, I contributed to that.
Right. But I'll contend.
Are you pushing back again?
I am. I'm sorry to keep doing this to you. But even if you are being picked on, even if every teacher is a jerk and they are picking on you because your hair is long or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's true, right? And you're not getting, and even if you're a kid, even if you're not getting the outcome you want, what are you going to do differently going forward to get the outcome you want?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you have to decide, I have to cut my hair. Maybe you decide I have to change schools. You are still, it doesn't matter. Everybody in your world is a jerk. Find a way to get out of that world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Because we've all experienced something where we were treated unfairly.
Oh, yes.
Right? And if you're treated unfairly, you can't accept it. I'm not saying go, whatever. I'm just saying you can't, if that's stopping you, you can ignore it. Actually, if you're treated unfairly and it doesn't matter in your life in the long run, then you ignore it and you move on.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, but if it matters, if it's getting you to an outcome that isn't right for you in your life, you still have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. They're going to still be jerks. You're not going to change the jerks. You still have to do something different. Sometimes in your life,
and sometimes even doing something different doesn't guarantee success.
It doesn't, but you can't keep doing the same thing, right?
100%.
And so there's sometimes in your life, right, you have to do addition by subtraction. And that means you have to figure out how to get a jerk out of your life.
Yeah.
Right? You have to move on from that person.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really hard. Sometimes.
So, so what I learned today the summary of our discussion is that you don't like my sweater.
I love your sweater. I do love it.
You push back. I think I heard you say push back 6 times. No, I'm just kidding.
That actually would have been my guess too. When I realized.
No, but I think it's like, I think what I loved, what you said, you know, as I took the mirror and self-reflection especially, is kind of what I see all the time, is you can also, well, 2 things. One, you also see that there's a self-reflection when you look out the window, right? I mean, you oftentimes can see yourself in the mirror, in the window as well. But
I love that imagery. That was great.
Yeah. The next version of that is what I think the majority of your pushback on me is that it's not just self-reflection. It's what I'm going to do about it in the future. You know, what behavior or what action am I going to change to potentially change the outcome of the results that I've been having.
Right.
Is that fair?
Great. Yeah. And I love the imagery, Nick. This was really, I just love it. And I don't know how, but I never heard of these analogies before, this framework. Yeah. So I'm going to steal it and use it. Hope that's okay.
That's fantastic.
So, but again, I thank you.
I'm going to go change my sweater. Okay. Thanks, Sam. Let's see you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the show today. I had a great time talking with Nick, as I always do. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Visit us on social media. Also, go to our website if you've got comments, questions, you want to call me an ugly name, thenickanthonyshow.com. There's a place to do it there. Give us your email address so you never miss an episode. Thank you very much. We'll see you next show.